welcome to our listening audience to the meaning of work. This is Luis Marrero, and I'm accompanied by Edwin and Mouriño. We're both going to be sharing some thoughts around what is work meaning. And let me start with some quick introductions. I'm Luis Marrero. I'm the founding partner of the Boston Institute for Meaningful Purpose. Our mission is to enable people and institutions to succeed in their meaningful purpose. And welcome, Edwin. Happy to have you here. Tell us about human capital organization development.
Thank you, Luis. I appreciate it. I'm really glad to be here, especially to be here with you, because we have a dual similar mission. So my company is Human Capital Organizational Development. And as you see there, it says my mission is to help leaders help themselves and help their organizations out, because my belief is that once we help leaders out, that has sort of a ripple effect into the effectiveness and positiveness of organizations that is very well needed today. So glad to be here with you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. It's good to be with you too. Okay, so listeners, what are we here? What is it that we are going to be covering today? So the topic is about meaning at work. So first we need to define what is meaning. Okay, so we'll be providing the definition really quickly. We're going to share some research around what is it that gives life meaning. And I'm going to be sharing the meaningful purpose psychology answer to that question. And talk about meaning at work and why it's important. Talk about the role that people can take, individuals can take to make life and work more meaningful and uplifting for themselves and for other people. The role of leaders in terms of strengthening the team and making work much more meaningful. Talk about the assumptions that must shape organizations in order to promote satisfaction and well-being and profit at work. And then at the end, this is a pre-recorded session, it's a pre-recorded podcast. At the end, after you're finished listening to this presentation, Edwin and myself will make ourselves available live to be able to answer your questions and to pretty much hopefully generate some participation of all participants. We look forward to your contributions and to your questions so we can make this much more interesting for everybody and engaging. So that's pretty much the learning objectives for today. Let's dive into the first question. And the first question is, like I said at the introduction, what is meaning? So I'm going to be providing a quick definition of meaning from a psychological point of view. Viktor Frankl, who's the father of logotherapy, pretty much defined meaning as what is meant. Okay, so meaning is what you mean to do, to what you're thinking, the approach that you have towards life, what you intend to do. Building on Viktor Frankl's definition, my meaningful purpose psychology answer to the question of what is meaning is an intention or goal backed by reasons, motives, and justifications. Nothing can happen without a reason, motive, and justification. Nothing can happen in the physical world, pretty much, in psychological world. So those are two definitions that we encourage you to consider as we continue to proceed in answering this question that what brings meaning to work. Is there anything else you would like to add, Edwin?
Yeah, another way I look at this too, I like those two, but another way I look at it too is what I'd call it the FM radio station that we all tune into, WIIFM, what's in it for me at the end of the day. So we give meaning to something that's important to us. We give it individual meaning, but then we also have to remember there is a societal definition to what is meaning at the end of the day. So there's that dual effort of it. But at the end of the day, at the core of it is what's important for me, what's in it for me here, and how do I give meaning to something I'm looking at or interpreting or I'm involved in.
Fantastic. That's an excellent way of explaining it. So in essence, what it is, people give meaning to themselves, they give meaning to other people, they give meaning to context or situation, and based on that meaning, you want to use the opinion it fits also, you're going to act out that meaning, that definition that you have given to yourself, other people, context, so far and so on. So excellent contribution, Edwin. Thank you so much. Go ahead.
One last piece I wanted to add here is, some people may initially look at this and listen to us here and think, well, this is pretty philosophical. But the reality is we do this hundreds of times throughout the day, where we come into situations and we give meaning to what's in front of us, what's happening to us. at the end of the day. And the other thing that society has blown up now and done is people are videotaping what's going on and what's giving meaning to those that are videotaping situations and to those that are in the situation. The perfect example is the George Floyd situations that provided meaning for the world at the end of the day, and the pandemic and so forth. So it happens. This is real. It's not just philosophical.
That's great. It's very practical. So the next topic we're going to be answering is what gives life meaning. And what I did was I studied, again, from a meaningful purpose psychology perspective, I studied a lot of the science out there that talks about what gives people's life meaning. And there's multiple models. So combining all these models, I came up with this 5 topics. What people want out of life, what gives their life meaning, what they yearn for, is to be loved, okay, to be a loving experience. I don't mean this just merely as a romantic experience or a touchy-feely type of experience. What people want is respect. What people want is to be considered. What people want is to be taken seriously. What people want is to be appreciated for the talents that they bring to the table. They want to be cared for, and they also like to, to take care and support other people when conditions are right. So this is a yearning that every single human being has from the moment of birth, is to be in love and relationships, to get along with people well. Love is a precondition to peace. There can't be no peace unless the basic fundamental need of love is satisfied, or that criteria is met. And when I say peace, what people want is actually peace of mind, to feel safe and secure in their surroundings. Nobody's going to stab me in the back with a knife. I feel protected. I feel supported by my group because they do care for me. As a result, I have this very stable emotional state. And that opens then conditions for people to be able to focus on the things that really matter in life. And especially when we're talking about work, to be able to engage themselves fully at work. Peace is also a precondition to happiness. And happiness is, again, it's a mood of contentment, appreciation, gratitude that people experience. And for a genuine condition of happiness to exist, like I said, people must be under those conditions where there's no distractions from that happiness. The other thing that people want is also to be doing interesting things with interesting people at interesting places. And I call that the interest and engagement component of what gives life meaning. Interesting, I also found in my studies, is that interest and engagement also contributes to happiness. So both peace and interest and engagement contribute to people to be in a positive, happy mood. And as a synergistic relationship between happiness and engagement and interest, that what it does is it promotes people to be much more focused, to be in a flow in order to get things done when they're in that very content and happy mood. And in all of the above, what they do is they lead to prosperity, spiritual prosperity, financial prosperity, intellectual prosperity, so forth and so on. So people also have the sense of growth and prosperity in life. So given these definitions of what does it mean and what gives life meaning, we're going to build now on the next questions using these definitions, this context, to expand and explain what gives then meaning at work. How you can make a work experience much more meaningful. So let me move to the next one. You want to take this one on, Edwin? What is the meaning of work?
Sure. So I love what you explained there a minute ago, because all of that builds into this. It's again, I want to stress, this is not just philosophical, it's real world experience. And I was going to say earlier, it's bleeding into the workforce, but it's not bleeding into the workforce. It's gushed into the workforce. So as you see there, the question is, what is the meaning of work? And we start off with, it's changing. So most of us traditionally think of, or the default is, work is that, that thing that we have to do for a paycheck, for a livelihood, for a career, whatever it is. But the fact of the matter is, this has been evolving and changing and shifting, and dramatically so over this last year. So as you see there, out of this book, which one of the co-writers was the founder of Whole Foods, they write that everyone craves meaning and purpose in life, but few people find such fulfillment at work. And so what's happening is workers' expectations are changing, and yet organizations are just not keeping up. Those that are differentiating themselves, are beating out the competition, and they're becoming a magnet for people to come to work to. The COVID experience, the pandemic, just accelerated that process. Just in the last 2 days on the news here, I was watching where they're having challenges. Organizations are having challenges with people coming back to work for a variety of reasons. But some of them are saying, health, either, hey, I'm not sure about the health issue, or number two, I can work fine from home, those kinds of things. So, but the third more important thing is that more people are saying, I want to enjoy when I want to go to work. I don't want to just live for TGIF or thank God it's Friday. I want to work in a place where everything is meaningful, where I do enjoy the people I work with. I really enjoy my job, type of thing. And as I've told my college students in the past, find what you love and have someone else pay you for it, and you'll never work a day in your life. And so this is really taking off, this particular mindset and philosophy, Luis.
Fantastic, yeah. And something that meaningful purpose psychology would say is work should be a place where people are able to fulfill their meaning in life. So if you have a meaning in life, you can use work, and companies can create conditions where people can fulfill their meaning in life through work as a way of growing, as a way of executing, putting into practice their meaningful life purpose to benefit other people. So this is great. And then you're making reference to conscious capitalism in your list in this board. And we really encourage people, if you haven't read the books that we're going to be suggesting and displaying here, that you go ahead and do that, because it's going to give you some additional information. So thank you for that, Edwin. I'm going to move to the next slide, and I'll let you have a conversation about this one, and then I'll follow through.
Sure. And so, the question, what motivates people? What motivates us? Well, Dan Pink, you can see him out on TED Talks and YouTubes and so forth. And this book here, one of the best books I've read when it comes to leadership, The Mind of a Leader, also reinforces his point that he talks about what really motivates people. And it's three things. Go ahead and build a slide. So as you can see there, it's autonomy, it's purpose, and mastery. Can you build it? It should show what each one of them is, but if not, I'll speak to it. So autonomy is the desire to direct our own lives. We want to have control over that at the end of the day, and have be the deciding person, the deciding individual in that area. Purpose is desire to do things in service of something bigger than ourselves. And that's becoming more and more. You're going to hear about this more as we go forward. That's increasingly being written about. Research is supporting that. Now, everybody talks about engagement. You just heard Luis mention it earlier. Now there's books out there and a lot of talks being talked about the workplace experience, which leads to engagement. And then lastly, mastery, which is the desire to continually improve at something that matters. That's continuing ongoing development. That's not just for the new entry into the workforce. That is for the 70-year-old that still may be working because they feel like, hey, you know what? I want to continue to direct my own life and contribute to society and leave part of my legacy. And part of my purpose is this. And so I want to continue to develop. Which again is another talk that I've spoke about the boomers and how they're still having an impact in society, where they've retired or quasi-retired or still doing things at work that are needed. So this, at the end of the day, is what really motivates people. And this is backed up by research, as Dan Pink says, and organizations need to wrap their head around this and create environments where this is going on, because this is really what the research is backing that people really resonate with. And all you have to do, those of you that are listening to us, is really think about this, put this up as a mirror to yourself and reflect on, is this true for me at the end of the day, beyond just a paycheck?
Yeah, fantastic. And that's what this also complements, again, was one of the models that also complemented the building of the 5 strivings that I talked about. There's also the PERMA model that was developed by Seligman. Those people in the School of Positive Psychology, my colleagues know very much, know well the PERMA model. So there's a lot of information out there that is pretty much corroborating the fact that people do want to have a purposeful experience of work, that they do something greater than themselves, just as you see in the chart here. So the challenge for companies, as you get to see further ahead, is how do you create conditions where you bring the best in people so that it can have a positive impact in the company. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's move then to the next one. And we're talking here about more than a paycheck. You want cover this one?
Yeah, I just read this one earlier this year, and it's really a great book. But one of the comments I pulled out of there is it says more organizations are building cultures and environments of belonging, purpose, meaning, happiness, and energy. So a couple of points. Luis, you alluded earlier to positive psychology, and that's been around for some time, since the 70s and 80s, but it's really picking up momentum now. And I think the pandemic just even maybe was even another turning curve too, and with Black Lives Matter and everything else. So more organizations are looking at what's our competitive advantage out there, because the lifetime of an organization is decreasing as we speak. And so those organizations that actually can inject this sort of flavor into their environments, of helping people of having an organization and a culture where people really belong and feel that there's a purpose and there's meaning, and believe it or not, happiness, something that you and I grew up with did not exist when we were younger in our work careers. Happiness was not the reason you went to work. You went to work just for a paycheck at the end of the day. But now this is really taking off. And so you can see it in some of those organizations around the world where there's a lot of energy. People enjoy working there. They're treated with dignity and respect. All of the things that you talked about earlier, sort of you call it love. They love to actually work there type of thing. And so today it's more than a paycheck. And later on, I'll get into a slide that actually talks about an interesting study where they show where a paycheck actually shows up when it comes to the scheme of things, an interesting study that they did worldwide. But yeah, Making Work Human, highly recommend this book, because it really gets at the feel and the flavor of those companies that are really taking a competitive advantage to the others when it comes to how do we make this just a great place to work.
Yeah. Something else that I would add is I wish I could remember the lady's researcher's name, but she pretty much talked about 3 ways that you can approach work, from an employee point of view. And she mentioned the fact that some people see work as a job, others see it as a career, and others to fulfill a mission. And when you create the right conditions and when you train your people appropriately, you help them think about meaning in life and meaning of work in the appropriate way, they can go to work with a sense of mission, not just to fulfill the needs of their career and not just to do a job and to meet the paycheck demands so that I can buy food and pay the rent, but they actually are highly motivated to go to work because they're fulfilling a mission that is very aligned with the company's mission. And that's where you have this very powerful resource in your employees. When you have employees with a mission that is very aligned, a life mission and a professional mission that is very much aligned with the company's mission. So I also read the books. I highly recommend Making Work Human. Okay, so I'm going to move to the next slide, and we're talking about leadership development, a critical investment. Again, I'll let you lead this one. I'm going to put in the components here, and feel free to talk it.
Yeah, so as you see here, 8 out of 10 CEOs recognize the importance of developing our leaders. It's, as they said, it's one of the most important factors, and they're backing it up. I mean, at least when this particular book was written, there's at least almost $50 billion investment in leadership development across different enterprises. So there's investment going on. However, there's still a gap. And, all of the stuff that we're talking about cannot be done without the commitment, serious commitment, genuine commitment of the leadership of the leadership group, of their capability to make things forward. But in this same book, what they found was 7 out of 10 leaders said they were engaged and maintaining their workforce engaged. And almost 9 out of 10 employees said, no, you're not. It's estimated only 8% of leaders are effective listeners and communicators at the end of the day. And we've talked so much about happiness, and yet, less than, 4 out of 10 employees are really happy at work. And then a couple of the kickers that blew me away was, as you can see here, almost 7 out of 10 employees would give up a pay raise to see their boss fired. Think about that. Almost 7 out of 10 employees would give up a pay raise to see their boss fired. That's pretty sad fact there, data point there. And then the other interesting thing is talk about, not being in touch with reality. 85% and 90% of managers and 97% of executives claim to be at the top 10% performers. That's their perception of themselves. So, no wonder the executive coaching business has exploded around the world. Because, you've got those with the imposter syndrome, you've got those with not really, thinking they're better than they are. And you can see some of the data here. So in order for organizations to really be creating an environment and a culture where people are committed, where there's purpose, where there's happiness and so forth, you need to address these disconnects that we have here. And there's an investment going on, but there's still a missing of the mark that needs to be addressed. And the one piece that's missing here now, we just spoke about it yesterday on the conference board because I'm a senior fellow on it, was how do you do this now remotely? And I just had even this conversation last night with my class of organizational behavior. Now that we got the complicated layer of how do I motivate Luis from a remote perspective. So those are all things that are important and crucial in order to make organizations more successful down the road. Luis.
Yeah, and two things. You got this data from the mind of the leader, right?
Correct.
Okay, and just for clarity of our audience, when you say 77% of leaders engaged versus the opinion of 88% of employees is that their managers are not engaged, right? That's what it means. Fantastic. Correct. Okay, just for clarity's sake. Again, very powerful data. You can't argue against facts, okay? Assuming that the research is thorough, this really says a lot in terms of the state of the business today, okay? The state of leadership. So let's move to the next slide. Continuing our journey. Okay, so we're talking here about alignment between workers and executives for well-being. I'm going to put the first column. You want to speak to it, or you want me to put both in so we can make the contrast?
Go ahead and put both of them. So here, okay. I was just talking about the importance, the investment of dollars. We've been talking about happiness and health and all these kinds of things. And then Deloitte just did a study this year, and they asked executives, so what do you think about employees' well-being? Well, they ranked it number 8. And when you ask the workers, they ranked it number 3. As a matter of fact, the executives rank customer service number 1. The employees rank it number 4. And all I share this with you is next time you go to a restaurant and the waiter, thank God the restaurant business is kind of coming back into a groove again, and the waiter seems to be not the best, either one of 3 things are happening. Either A, they're just having a bad day, or B, they're in the wrong type of a job. They shouldn't be in that type of a job. Or C, they just got kicked in the kitchen and they came out and now they're putting it on you, the customer. So they're not being treated well. So you take care of the employee. And this former CEO of Southwest used to say this, the same CEO of Virgin Records and Air says the same thing. You take care of the employees, they take care of the customer at the end of the day. But executives there's still a disconnect. As much money as they're investing in leadership development, they're still seeing a disconnect. And I just saw recently the disconnect where a couple of CEOs are saying, you got to come back to work. There's not going to be this remote work going forward. And I'm sorry, but the train has left the station. People are going to fight that. And now what's going to happen is you're going to have more remote workers available, whether they like it or not. So there still seems to be a disconnect between executives and the frontline employees, and that needs to be addressed.
And for me, but this also speaks, Edwin, and listening audience, is that what we have here is that the value system of organizations and their employees and other stakeholders are not aligned. And when you have misalignment of values of what is critical, important, what has priority, okay, you're going to have dysfunction. You're not going to maximize the potential that is existence within the organization. So it's very important to do an exercise where all stakeholders have a say and they're able to prioritize the values of the company. And yeah, profit definitely has to be there. That's part of the component. Otherwise, the company is not going to exist. But it's to really look at what are those levers that do have, and in what sequence of importance, okay, are they going to have that positive impact on profitability, market share, and things that are important to the company. That has to be a joint conversation with all stakeholders. so that there's a common agreement, and this is what we call shared meaning, that we have a shared meaning in terms of what's really important. When you do that, again, you can maximize the potential of the company with all the stakeholders involved.
And you know, one last little piece I want to add there to something you just said. Profitability is important. Obviously, the organization wouldn't exist, but you know what? There's been companies that have been able to manage both profitability and the employee at the same time and balance it well. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
After 9/11, the only airlines that didn't lay off an employee was Southwest Airlines. And now with the pandemic, again, it tried to live to that philosophy and belief. And there's been organizations out there when times are tough, everybody takes a break. There's some sort of a discount, some sort of a cut in pay or somewhere, but from the top on down. So they really try to model what they think is important, particularly if one of their important values is our people are our most important value asset type of thing. So they try to live to their values.
That's right. And when you have shared values, decision making becomes very simple, just like Southwest, for instance, is modeling. So great point. Okay, so let's move to the next question then. What is the meaning of organizations? You know, why do organizations exist? Who do they serve? So I'm going to move to the next slide, and I'll let you then take the lead in this one.
Yeah, so obviously an organization exists to provide a service, a product of some sort, and to be profitable at the end of the day. But probably most people listening in, if they're working in any decent sized company, they have worked in a bureaucratic environment. You know, people claim that it's just the government. It's not. Most big organizations are very bureaucratic, including higher educational institutions, very bureaucratic. And so what this book addresses, which is another great one I highly recommend, it says that when you're in a bureaucratic environment, you're focusing first on the organization, then the individual, then the output. And his argument is you ought to become more of a humanocracy. And with here, you're focused on the individual, the institution, and the impact, which kind of supports the previous slide that we were just talking about, the disconnect there between the execs and the workforce. Because when you do that, as they call it, distributed ownership, that means where everybody is winning, and if the organization is suffering, everybody's suffering equally at the end of the day when hard times come. But when you do that, it does all of these things here, which all of them turn out to reach above average returns, which is why the existence of an organization. You're there to deliver a product and a service and to be profitable. Well, if you can address all of these, you know, then obviously it achieves a great place to work, great place experience, workplace experience, and in turn, above average returns. That is their point of reference and their information that they're backing up and saying, we need to get out of this bureaucracy because we humans were not made for a bureaucratic environment. It's very frustrating when it takes me 3 days to get something from Luis just because we have to jump through different hoops versus if I can just pick up the phone and say, Luis, I need some help on XYZ. Can you help me here? Then it's individual to individual. We make it work for the success of the organization, for the efficiency, for the service, for the product that we're trying to provide out there at the end of the day.
That's great. This also reminds me of a couple of models. One of them that speaks about, you know, the human as machine within a company, you know, look as just another part, another, you know, element of the mechanism of the company versus seeing people from a lens of potential. Okay. So again, great point taken. Again, here's a book that you could also take a read on, Humanocracy. So great addition, Edwin. All right, so let me move to the next question. Okay, what is your role in this effort and journey? Again, what is your role in this effort and journey?
So,
and I'll let you take the lead.
Okay, so obviously your role in this journey is one to contribute and do the best, but particularly if you're in a leadership role, you need to take care of your workforce at the end of the day. That's been the underlying theme we've been talking about here. So this one here, and you're welcome to go look at this TED Talk out there, the 2030 Workforce Crisis, is basically talking about the aging workforce across the world. And they did a study of almost 250,000 people. And they asked them, hey, well, who are you looking for? What are you looking for in your next employer? Well, look where pay showed up. Number 8 across the world, irrespective of organization, country in the world, and so forth. So attractive salary was number 8. The top 4, good relationship with my superior, good work-life balance. Now it's really good work-life integration, not balance, and particularly with the pandemic has now put work in our homes, good relationship with my colleagues. And lastly, more importantly, it's just a thank you, appreciation for a job well done. That's free. And so again, if more leaders and organizations start to address these, because these top four are all about organizational culture, if more leaders and organizations address these, I think that that will be more effective. So the role in this effort and journey for you listening in, if you happen to be a leader, is really look at that and ask yourself, put the mirror up to yourself and saying, how well am I doing here? Number one. Number two, go check with your staff and your employees to see if you really are doing that, if they'll give you a really a true answer to that, because you already saw there's a disconnect between some people in the previous research I shared with you, where people said, I'm a good boss and I'm keeping my workforce engaged, and the workers are saying, no, you're not. So again, the role as a leader is that. Number two, the role as you, an individual worker, is to look at, are these four things, do they align with your own values? Do you have a good boss? Do you have good work-life integration? It's not balance anymore. And do you have a good relationship with your colleagues? And are you being appreciated for the work you do? And at the end of the day, too, are you also appreciating others, too, paying it forward, so to speak?
And I would say that the only thing that I would add is to listen, and especially leaderships out there, it is cheaper to create conditions where people are intrinsically motivated than having to pay cash, because you're creating conditions where people have to be extrinsically motivated. So intrinsic motivation is cheaper, it's much more efficient, and it's going to give you the biggest bang for the buck. So go for it. So great.
No pun intended there.
That's right. There we go. All right, going to the next slide because I want to be sensitive to time. So what is the organization's responsibility? That's the next question we're going to be answering. What is the organization's responsibility? So here's some things that we would like you to think about. When you think about why the organization does it exist to serve humans, or do humans are there to serve the organization? And we argue that it's best if you have organizations save all stakeholders, again, because all stakeholders benefit from the process. So we need to ask ourselves fundamental question: what is the meaning of humans? And how do we treat them? How do we treat human beings? The stakeholders that are involved in our company. Are your values and practices humane? Okay, are they aligned with the dignity of the human person and what motivates those individuals? Is being incompatible with profit in your company, okay? Or do you think that they're contradictory realities? Does your organization reward collaboration? Or do you have, like I have found when I do my consulting with Fortune 500 companies, many times I have, discovered that there's reward systems within the company that does not promote collaboration. I'm not going to get into detail, but it's something that, companies need to think about. So obviously, when you have reward systems that are not compatible and congruent, it leads to internal infighting and all kinds of problems. And then finally, do you invest in human development in order to build organizational capability so that you can trust employees that they'll be capable to do the jobs that they're called to do? Okay, so. Or you just invested in human development for them to produce something, to benefit the company. That meaning that you give is going to, that attitude is going to be perceived that the employee, and many times they're not going to give you their best if the motive what you're doing, the development is not necessarily to help them fulfill their mission in their role in their profession. So with that background, with those questions in mind, let me move to the next slide, and this is where Edwin is going to come in and discuss this information in this chart.
Yeah, so one of the things I want to touch on from the previous slide is about the values. There's another book out there that talked about the top 20 values in the world for all organizations, and they're all pretty similar. It's customer service, employee-centric, trust, work collaboration, those kinds of things. So you have to ask yourself, do the values that we have in our walls in our business are we living to those? That's one. And two, we have to remember this, to his original question, is work human type of thing. We have to remember that without humans, organizations are just buildings, empty buildings at the end of the day. And that real estate is being challenged today because those that can work from home don't have to be in the building. So I'm sure senior boards are looking at that and going, how much real estate do we have out there? And do we really need that much real estate anymore? So keep that in mind. In this particular book here, as it says there, Human Work in the Age of Smart Machines, one of the points is posed out there, I think, as it starts off in the slide, it says, know and address your workforce needs and concerns. So as it says here, most workers having real meaning at work is essential to their happiness. I go back to that word that I talked about earlier, and life satisfaction. And that's even higher when you go into the younger workforce. So the millennials and even the Gen Zs that are coming behind them. Some of them are already in college and working anyway. So that's important to remember, that most workers are looking for, again, meaning, which goes back to Dan Pink's what motivates us at the end of the day type thing. And then the interesting thing was, just yesterday I was on a call with the conference board, and they came out with this new study they just found, where they found that almost 100% of people that were responsible for helping their organizations be successful from the employee perspective, found that mental and psychological well-being was a priority. And this became even more important, particularly now during the pandemic, during the social unrest, all of this kind of stuff that was going on, the political unrest that's been going on in this country, all of that. So now that's even elevated more so. So mental and psychological well-being is a priority. And obviously it's more an increasing priority when, as it says here in the book, Dying for a Paycheck, the fifth cause of death is work. Due to stress. And so one of the things that I tell my students, I say, you sure you want to graduate out of college and go to work? My advice to you is don't tell your parents and stay in college till you're 45 type of thing. Because as it says here, most organizations are doing nothing, and it's costing them billions of dollars, which is a contradiction to the bottom line. We need to improve the bottom line. Well, if you do certain things that helps humanity, your human workforce out there to a bigger extent, then you would impact positively your bottom line. So mental, psychological well-being is a priority, and it's because stress has been with us for a long time, and it's just continuing to increase as we go forward at the end of the day. So not only know what your workforce is thinking and feeling and so forth, but you need to put strategies in place, human capital strategies in place to address those workforce needs, because this is a cultural shift that has to happen in your organization. So my advice to the listeners is, put the mirror up to yourself and your organization and go, how well are we doing when it comes to this? Are we surveying? Are we finding out how our employees are saying? And if they don't say much, that also says something too in itself.
Fantastic. This is great data. Good segue to the next slide. We're getting close to the end here. So let's start wrapping up. What are the benefits of meaning? When you think about meaning, we provide definitions. We have pretty much shared with you from a psychological point of view, what is it that people need and want? What do they expect from work? And to what degrees are companies and leaders meeting those needs and expectations? And we see there's a significant gap. So what can we do? What are the benefits of doing meaningful type work, or creating conditions where people experience meaning at work, in life and at work? Let's start first with you, the listener. Let's say you're an employee, for instance, or just a contributor within a company, regardless of your position. You need to take responsibility for your life. So it's pretty much thinking about, what is the meaning and purpose of my life? Okay, how am I going to fulfill it in the different roles that I play in my life? And in the topic that we're talking today, how can I fulfill my life purpose, the meaning of my life, through work? So what is the right company? What is the right job? And again, approach it from the perspective, not of a job, not just a career, but as a mission. You're fulfilling your life mission through work. So that's something we encourage you to think about as an individual. From a team and departmental point of view, the benefit of meaning is that if you follow what motivates people, those 5 strivings that we talked about, the model that Edwin covered, there's the Perman model, so far and so on. If you look at the people within your team as people who also have dreams, aspirations, learn from one another, share information with one another, build one another, edify one another, so you can become all high performers and get the right kinds of things done. So care for one another, eliminate drama within your departments, at the peace component that I talked about, make work joyful, do interesting and productive things that will have some positive contribution in society, and then finally, make sure that the effort of working as a team leads to some level of prosperity, of positive impact in society and yourselves and the company, so far and so on. For organizations, the benefits of meaning is going, you can be much more profitable and have a higher impact in society and your bottom line if you do what works. So the invitation to do it is stop doing what doesn't work, start doing what works. We have covered some very important facts here. If you want more information, you can reach out to Edwin and myself. We'll be happy to work with your company in order to make it much more aligned with creating conditions for positive motivation and meaningful work. We'll be happy to do that. Anything else you would like to add, Edwin?
I think the only other piece is, at the end of the day, if you happen to be an executive listening in or a leader listening in, you have a thumbprint on whether it's your department or your organization. You bring a big influence to the organization. So really look in the mirror and recognize, how can I continue to improve? And how can I continue to make a difference in my work life, with my workforce? And what's going to be my legacy? What do I want to leave behind? What's the things that I want to create here? So I would suggest really look at that. And you as an employee, take care of yourself. We already highlighted, unfortunately, work is the 5th cause of death due to stress. So really take care of yourself at the end of the day and ask yourself, am I in the right place doing what I really love and wish I was doing? Because if you're doing what you love, you lose track of time. And so I would say, just look in the mirror, reflect, and ask yourself, how's my organization doing when it comes to these things? What kind of a grade would I give it, A, B, or C? And based on that, how do I continue to improve? Because this is not a destination. It's an ongoing journey as we move forward.
Fantastic. Okay, well, this is approaching here the end. We want to thank our listening audience and wish you well in terms of taking this information and turn it into something productive. And again, like I said, Edwin and myself are available if you would like to learn how to bring this to life within organizations or within your team, or perhaps as an individual. We'll be happy to help you with some coaching from that perspective. Ways to reach us is here you have our respective addresses. We're going to leave it on screen. And again, thank you very much for listening. Edwin and I, after you listen to this presentation, we're going to make ourselves available live to answer your questions. And also we're going to be encouraging discussion, as much discussion as possible on the listening audience, and take your questions and through chat or perhaps live. We'll see how it works so that we can make this a richer experience for all of you. So thank you very much. Edwin, any closing remarks before we wrap up?
I hope everybody got something out of this, and I hope you are enjoying your work life as much as I enjoyed working with Luis on this particular piece. So it's a pleasure. And if we can be of help to you, don't hesitate to reach out. We'll be glad to do that.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you again. We'll see you then on the other side.